Richard Mammah joins us this morning. He's managing director and editor-in-chief of The Difference and former editor of Business Homework. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
I don't know, well, editors such as yourself have to cope with all kinds of issues these days, especially the ones that, burning on our hands right now, the Kaduna train attack. The Leadership newspaper is what we open with this morning. We have failed. Governors apologize to victims. That's the way the story is captioned on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Say attack questions their capacity to govern. Bandits contact families of kidnapped victims. Kill 9 security operatives in Niger. Reps berate service chiefs over incessant attacks. 13 women and children drown while fleeing from terrorists. This is the lead of the paper this morning, and almost all the papers have the same story. Any take?
I agree with the governors. It's a massive, failure across the board, and we need to take responsibility. Governance has dropped, in a significant sense. Sometimes it looks like tales, from where are these tales coming from? If you were reading the headlines as fiction, you would say, okay, these are quite imaginative, but these are human beings, these are lives, these are communities, these are people. This is supposed to be a nation. This is supposed to be some place with some governance, with some order, with some structure, with systems. There is massive failure, and it's good the governors are owning up to part of it, but literally everyone else should own up, beginning with the president.
Well, that's the lead of the paper this morning, and a good number of other stories, but there's this one that's also been on for a while. Senate asks DSTV, StarTimes, others to cut tariffs. Do you see that happening?
I think that at a certain point in time it would happen, just like the GSM, scenario. I think it would happen. I don't know how quickly, but I think it would happen. The pressure has been on for a while. There's widespread, acceptance of that, if not demand, from the streets, as it were. So it's going to happen. It is now going to be the dynamics of the process. What would help it to give Nigerians the benefit of the relief they want would be that there will be greater degree of competition in the sector. Because if you have a monopoly and oligopoly structure, you don't get those benefits, just as has happened with some commodities where we thought that importing was the only problem, and we began to produce, and we discovered that the prices continued, to run, skyward in that sense. So there's got to be, a wholesome, structural adjustment of the entire process in the industry.
This conversation has been on for a long time, actually.
Absolutely.
I recall we've had this conversation with the FCCPC head concerning this one. And it's tricky, really, because at the heart of this, really, yes, we can say it's about the different channels, but there's something at the heart of it, which is football. English Premiership, let me just say that. And getting the rights for that it's exclusive to, I think, the service provider here in Africa. So if you're talking about competition, anybody that would spring up that does not have that right, it will be very tricky to have real competition. And don't forget, I think the structure or the model is like pulling funds together from everybody, as it were, so that you can make up for that. So if individuals have to do pay as you watch, then you probably have to pay more individually. So I don't know, are we factoring in the side of the service provider as well in this conversation?
No, I think you do have a point that, there are, prime channels, there are prime, programs within the bouquet, as it were. But, I think the point would be that first, justice is not the absence of striving, of interest. It is that the field is open and the field is predictable, it is transparent. So when you put the cards on the table, if people have to pay a bit more for the Premiership, matches because of the huge following and the costs that are involved, now they will take responsibility for what they are paying. It's like what has happened with the prepaid meters. give everyone a prepaid meter and let them determine how much usage.
And then some are premium anyway.
Yeah.
And they pay more.
And they pay more, because it is now. You don't have people paying different rates, on this, and enjoying the services,
I think that makes sense.
Well, it's only a matter of time. We wait to see.
I know you're not a football fan per se, so this doesn't even concern you one bit.
I'm a football fan, I just don't watch.
You don't watch it live. Well, let's turn our attention to the Nigerian Tribune, which also has the Abuja-Kaduna train attack on the front page, but with a different angle to this one. This focuses on the healthcare being received by the victims. And there you go. Youths donate blood, terrorists contact families. How bureaucracy caused train attack, Amechi. Attack questions our collective ability to govern, that's according to governors. Reps blast service chiefs over failure to honor invitation. I think this also has been reflected. But there's a statement from Senior Advocate Falana saying FG must prosecute indicted 1,200 terror sponsors suspect now. He's been speaking about that for quite some time now, and I think it's important for the government to also come out regarding its position on this one. But let me get your thoughts on this. The pictures on the front page, the aftermath of the Nigeria-Ghana match, vandalized facilities at MKO Abiola National Stadium, and you can see some of them. The dugout was vandalized. I think the inside as well, or the entrance, I imagine, and a host of other things. What do you make of all that? Is that just normal, heartbreak that then showed up in terms of the fans, or did we get something wrong in the build-up to that one?
I think our football has been in trouble. It's been in trouble for a while, and it looks to me there's been a whole lot of frustration, with the entire processes, including even the processes of organization of the football sector. So I think it's that build-up, the fact that you even can't do anything about it. For example, there have been a whole lot of complaints about capacity of the NFF, the Football Federation, and literally you can't do anything about it because it's a cartel. 24 or thereabout, they just get into their conclave, pick somebody, and then they run their whole systems, and the whole nation has to wait, for whether they want to tilt left or tilt right. And then the whole process is about the coaching and the coaches and the choice of the teams and the fact that it was Ghana. The Nigeria-Ghana, rivalry over time.
This is beyond jollof now.
And then the associated social factors. People have been queuing for fuel in the same Abuja, and people have been dealing with issues of inflation. People have been dealing with their own frustrations, as it were. So I think 2, 3, 4 issues just boiled up, and people responded.
Yeah, those who also wonder, Mr. Mammah, that maybe this could have been preempted and, never allowed to happen because of the free rides, free tickets, and all of those things.
Yeah, I do agree with you. To me, I would not have encouraged the free stadium shows, as it were. I know the Abuja Stadium has had this historic, challenge of having inadequate, patronage, in that sense. But given the social factors and given also the fact that you needed a whole lot of concentration, even in terms of the match, this did not look to me like what you would have just thrown open. There are stadia in the country that seem to have a lot more audience, crowd, spectator, compatibility. Maybe the one in Cross River, and if you're that stadia over time where you have very enthusiastic support. But Abuja has never featured for me in terms of our hot fan base. Maybe even Ibadan. And it was our prerogative to take the match to where we had, scale, supportership, in that sense. The Ghanaians took us to Kumasi.
Okay, I don't want you to open those wounds again for a lot of Nigerians because they're trying to heal. But just to mention, absolutely. Just to mention this one, FG approves procurement of lie detectors, night vision goggles for NDLEA. So it looks like it's going to be pretty harder to lie to NDLEA officials. But that's the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Markwe.
Well, let's take a look at the Vanguard. It's one of those days when it would look like as if the editors had a pre-meeting. And they also have this. Kaduna train attack questions our capacity to govern. Again, attributed to the governors. That story is on page 5 for you. Mourning now an everyday ordeal. That's according to CAN. Life near worthless under APC. Buhari says PDP. We must treat economic saboteurs with iron hand. That's according to Senator Buhari. Controversy rages over passengers manifest. Hopefully we'll get some clarity on that much later today. News analysis, you also have bandits' threat to road, rail, air transportation in Kaduna. There will also be some perspective on that. Page 27, however, gives you details on that of the Vanguard newspapers. You also have this story, and maybe I'd like you to comment on this. Why Nigeria should reduce annual population growth. That's from the MPC chairman. We know that our population has been, it's under question now. We've been told that we might be, is it 300 million by the year? Is it 2030 or 2050? Not very certain now. But we are growing at an exponential rate, and it's supposed to be an advantage. Why do you think the MPC chairman will say we need to reduce annual population growth?
Yeah, I think that, population works in two ways. I sympathize with those who say that we still have some more space, so population should not be a major issue. But, you've got to put everything in the basket. We do not have the resources to drive the growth rate. Because if you check, across the past almost a decade or so, growth rate has been in the average of about 3%. At the same time, you have not had, that is, population growth rate has been an average of about 3%. But you also have not had economic growth rate, matching that. In the past 6 years, for example, it's been under 2%. Averagely speaking, except for last year where we had, a bit of a boost, but that in itself, we have to wait to see how sustainable it is. So, because the population would have to eat, the population would have to be schooled, the population would have to be kitted, the population would have to be taken care of. And it's a competitive world, the economies of scale do not favor high population numbers, in that sense. So I think it's a practical, point to deal with, the population dynamics. Now, when you raise your revenues to the extent that you can pay more of your bills, maybe you can now start talking in terms of, okay, we have enough funds to deal with those, the issues that come, from our numbers. And so it's not a big deal. At a point, the Chinese were very stern on, their population policy, but they have leveled up because they can pay for their numbers, So if you can't pay, don't go. I think it's a simple, straightforward dynamic.
I hope that people who should listen are listening. You also have this. U.S. begins interview waiver program for certain visa renewals. 30 days ago, I didn't know I'll become APC national chair. That's attributed to the new national chair of the APC, Adamu. You have a number of other stories on top of the nameplate and the back page. The one that catches my attention here is this: NFF apologizes over Super Eagles' failure. What do we make of this apology?
Of the apology? I think NFF had enough time to have spared themselves the apology. I think, it's the one you will call medicine after death. Yes, we have received the apology, but I think that if you ask me, the minimum pacifier would be that the NFF board, should voluntarily throw in the towel so that we can move forward to new dynamics in the sector. I would think so.
Will that ever happen? Do we resign in Nigeria? The big question. Well, your Mr. and Mrs. is on the front page this morning. Perhaps a little something to cheer us up. Mrs. is telling Mr., take the fruits, dear. You should know the benefits of fruits in the body if you don't Google it. And Mr. says, with or without proper food like pounded yam and assorted meat, Mr. is very doubtful that there could be much benefit accruing from fruits alone. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
Perhaps Mr. is essentially saying, even pounded yam is from fruits. After all, yam is a fruit, right?
Yam is a tuber. Wow, you're a mister this morning.
Daily Trust newspaper has this one on its front page. Also, that unfortunate story, the Abuja-Kaduna train bombing. Security forces failed to act despite intelligence on planned attack. How terrorists, bandits collaborated to lay siege. NRC ignores request to cancel night ride over security concerns. Enough talk and our endless mourning. Imams can tell Buhari. Abductors begin contact with families. All of that packed on the front page, continues on page 3 of the paper this morning. But there is this rather troubling one right beside the pictures there. Foreigners taking over coastal trade in Nigeria. That is ascribed to barge owners. I don't know what you make of this one. When foreigners are taking over coastal trade, and this is not the first time we're hearing stuff like this.
I think that nations do different things to defend their interests, preeminently economic interest, in that sense. I know countries, for example, where if you are going to do a business, they would insist that there must be 51%, equity from, a citizen of that country, in that sense, in your business. So, and there are also countries that put restrictions of one form or the other. Now, coastal trade, jumps two ways. First, there are the economic dimensions. If you take the trade, it means that the locals don't have enough of it, in that sense. But on the other hand, there are also the security issues, because the coast is the coast, connected to the waterways and all the processes. And we know that the Gulf of Guinea area where we fit in is supposed to be the highest in terms of piracy, in that sense. We also have issues with, oil bunkering, and the fact that I think in February we lost about 83 or so percent of our oil that was produced, according to, one of the surveys that was done. So it's important that I think we should take ourselves serious, whether it is in security, whether it's in business. We should, because you get the outcome of what you put in. We don't appear till date to be a nation of rigor, and it begins from the top. There should be rigor at the top so that it can percolate down. It's called leadership. There should be rigor. There should be thoroughness. You don't start jumping situations at intervals or running after the fact. The business environment, ease of doing business, business processes, growing your GDP, they are all tied to the plans you have made ahead of time to be able to build on that. And we have made the point repeatedly, if the federal infrastructure cannot take care of all of this, which it cannot, outsource a lot of these constitutionally and structurally to the subnationals. Because these coastal areas, impede on states. They are both states in that sense. So let the states deal with their coastal trade, and what the federal does is to help reinforce, in that sense, and that's what it is.
Okay. I guess we wait to see. I don't know. I don't even know what to make of that. That's the Daily Trust.
Well, next on the lineup is Daily Times, and true to what Mark West said, look as though the editors copied notes, because you have the story on the Kaduna train attack, the House of Reps summoning national security advisors, service chiefs, and others over rising insecurity. But I'll focus on that statement from the NGF saying Kaduna train attack questions our collective ability to govern. Those are very deep words, and perhaps just take a moment to sink in, saying that it questions the collective ability of, and I imagine saying governors, to govern. And I wonder what should follow after this, because yes, we hear statements like this. So one can almost predict the kind of statements that will come after incidents like that. But what should follow? Are we talking enough about that?
No, I think that across board, there's a whole lot of trepidation as to what should follow. If you ask now confidence rating of Nigerians in the security systems, in their security, very, very low. Very, very low. The nation is in a very dispirited mood. The minimum that could have happened yesterday and if it has not happened yesterday, it should happen today, is that the president should do exactly what the governors have done. He should speak to this nation and tell the nation that he is sorry. Directly, frontally, in what is called a broadcast. And then he should go ahead and tell us 3-4 things that he is going to do. Because part of the challenge, that we have is that the whole idea that one attack takes place, and they happen daily. One attack takes place, another. So, it's an editor's nightmare. What's going to, if you see a copy across the past 3-6 months without an attack story, it's not a Nigerian copy, invariably. It's not a Nigerian copy on the cover. Now, which tells you that in terms of scale, it's a magnitude issue, Now, why should this be recurring? You had the airport, scenario. We've had the roads that have been taken, out. Now, all means, Kaduna does not have, enormous waterway access in terms of, getting to Kaduna from the different parts of the country. So literally, Kaduna is trapped. And this is a cool city. I love Kaduna. Stayed there for about a year myself. Visit now and again. But it's not my fondest travel destination today. It's not. And it's painful.
I mean, lots to unpack from that one. But let's flip this over to Abuja now. Mammah.
When he said that, I just wanted to start the song, "We shall overcome." We certainly will, as a people. And I think that for a lot of people, they also have that feeling about Kaduna, Jos, Plateau State. They have that feeling about many parts of this country, which is becoming almost impossible to travel to again. But as I did say, we will overcome. Look at this. The Guardian has this story on the front page. Experts blame government for failure to secure rails. That's on the front page of The Guardian for you. I'm trying to just confirm that today's date is March the 31st. And if there's one thing that The Guardian newspapers has been consistent about, it is their coverage of women's activities throughout this month of March. Isn't it fitting that we wrap up the month of March with this picture they have on the front page showing the National Convention of the National Council of Women's Societies here, which happened here in Abuja. So that's right on the front page for you, a big story, a big picture as well. But for the lead story, you see the experts blame government for failure to secure rails. They have this right. FEC observes minute silent for victims of Abuja-Kaduna train track. Commuters on Kaduna-Abuja route at mercy of dreaded highway with no rail air transport. Banditry, terrorism, question our capacity to govern. Governors lament. That's also on the front page of the paper. You also have a number of other stories at the bottom there. 20 drowned fleeing attacks in Niger as terrorists again killed 23 in Kaduna. So there's been plenty of attention on the rail tragedy, but there's also, Kaduna has been battling quite a number of security challenges in the south of the country and in the south of the state, and also in the north as well, which they are trying to the state government is trying to, put a lead on. But this is what you see. Terrorists again killed 23 in Kaduna. Page 3 will give you details. Kogi denies illegal taxation on telcos. That's also there. IPOB rejects naming second Niger bridge after President Buhari. And look at this story. TB killed 156,000, infected 452,000 Nigerians in 2020. These are, would I say, shocking statistics. The indicators are quite troubling. So while we're dealing with insecurity, on the other hand, we also have health challenges that seem to be wreaking havoc without much notice. How do we tackle this?
Sorry, I didn't get a point through.
repeat well, what she's actually asking is, about all of the issues that are on the front pages of the Guardian newspaper this morning, especially the insecurity bits and all of that. What are our expectations? How do we tackle them?
Margaret, thanks. I think, how do we tackle it? I think that we have a massive governance issue, just like the governors have admitted. And I think that governance has to be addressed. You have the arms of government, in this case, more importantly, at this point, the National Assembly and the executive. Now, we have had cause across a period of time to review issues, related to whether, Nigeria had enough. For example, when the governors are apologizing, and are talking about, failure at that sense. Remember that there's been this call across time, for the security infrastructure in the country to be adjusted so that governors, can take some more responsibility in a practical sense. You take money from the states to support the security system, but the states, invariably do not have, the wherewithal, to drive troops, on ground, in that sense. They've got to take it to the federal, and then the federal uses its discretion to decide which one is high stake, which one is not. Meanwhile, federal is far. Federal is Abuja. In that sense. Because if you take, for example, say Niger, for example, and even Kaduna, two states that have been, the hotbed, of, violence and the crisis, as it were, on the security sector. You hear of attacks on local government areas. Now, local governments are 774 across the country, maybe 20, 30 in an average state. And the best people to deal with it are the managers of the local government system and the managers of the state system.
Okay.
Definitely not federal.
But there are those who also question, since we have DSS officials in all of these local governments, how come we still have issues with intelligence? But please don't answer that one. We have so many things to thank you for this morning, your comments, your thoughts and perspectives on the issues raised. Richard Mammah, Managing Director and Editor-in-Chief of The Difference, is former editor, Business Hallmark. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming this morning.
Welcome.
Now, there are so many issues happening. Let's take on a few of them when we return from this break. Stay with us.